In this video, we're going to draw a tree with 4 alcohol markers of different types.
It's color, it's color Christy.
Just remember, you can use whatever you have. You don't have to use the exact colors I have. I'll give you some direction along the way. So let's get started. These are the 4 colors that I'm using for the tree, and then I'll use a couple other colors for the tree branch. So for the tree, we're just going to draw kind of a big old tree blob. Kind of like this. Maybe it's got some little wonkies coming out here and there. And then maybe we've got a couple of like spots that you can see through. So I'm just going to color this all in, but the way I'm going to color it is sort of in like circles or little tiny marks. So either like this or like this. I don't want to do full strokes like that because this will give it texture if I do it like this. So on the bottom layer, the first layer, you'll already have a little bit of texture to help with that final look. If that makes sense. I also like doing it this way because it'll kind of look like there's some, because you can see little bits of white and things like that. It'll be like a real tree where there's light coming through in different spots. A real tree is not a solid color, so this gives it that sort of feel. Now keep in mind, these are the colors I'm using, but you can use any colors. You can use only 2 colors, you can use 3, you can use 4, you can use 6, and they don't have to be the exact markers I'm using. I'm using a Copic, 2 cheap markers, and an Artist Loft, but you can use Ohuhu, you can use Copic, you can use anything that you have. You don't need to use the exact colors that I'm using. It's more important that you have a light, a mid-tone, a dark, and an even darker, or even just a light, mid-tone, and a dark. So I could even probably get rid of this middle one here, and then I would have 3, or I could get rid of this one. Just use what you have. This doesn't need to be perfect. So with my next color, I'm going to darken some of the areas. And we're going to assume that the light is coming from this way, so the sun. So all of the shading will be here or like within the tree. So I'm using the same technique that sort of, I don't even know what you would call this. I never gave it a name or never found a name for it. And we're just going to deepen some of the areas that we know would be shaded. So the sun would be coming here, would probably be hitting around the tree here, and there might be some spots that are darker. So I'm going to do little spots within the tree, like the upper part. Same thing here. But the sun is coming this way, but it would still be hitting parts of the tree if this was, so say this was like pulled forward, this little section here. Then there would be some sun hitting that. Hope that makes sense. Then we have a little bit of sun peeking through there as well. Okay, that's our second layer. I'm going to go a little bit darker even. This is called grass green. So the 2 previous colors we had were Mignonet from Copic. Deep olive green, this is a cheap marker brand, and now I'm using grass green. And you can find similar cheap marker brands at the links in my description. This is called Lisa Suprema. I think these are only available in Canada, but there are a ton of really good cheap marker brands. And I have my favorites and my people who buy based on my channel and the content that I create, all of their favorite brands are listed below. So I'm going to do the same thing. So if you notice with the shaded part that I've already done, I went about halfway up, and now I'm going to go about halfway up that section that I just did. And I'm using that same technique. And then I'm going to add a couple little dots here and there just to make it look like it's, you know, shade, like maybe a leaf here and there is shaded. And it doesn't have to be exactly halfway up. I know I said halfway and sometimes I go a little bit more, a little bit less. It's not an exact science. It's just, you're just kind of doing, you know, it's art. It's meant to be interpreted however you want. So I probably went up a little too high there, but that's okay. We want all kinds of different values throughout the whole thing. So I'm actually going to put a little bit here so that it looks like sort of the inner tree is a little bit darker. Now I've got another dark one. This is Artist Loft. This is from Michaels. It's called Sage. It's this color here. So I'm just going to do my darkest areas with this one. And you'll notice this color is more of a yellow, so it's more of a warm green. So it gives it a little bit of a different look. It almost brings in a little bit of kind of a brownish, yellowish color. And maybe I'll add a couple of dots here and there. I'm deepening that bottom part there. Now we've got to do the tree trunk, but if you're near a window, look out and see if you can see the closest tree. People usually think that trees are brown, but they're more gray than brown. So I'm going to use my yellowish gray. This is from a Grayscale Ohuhu set, but you can use whatever you have. If you just have gray, you can do gray, like a light gray, and then add a couple of tones of brown. You could use just gray, whatever you want. And remember, a tree trunk is not like this. That's not how a tree is. A tree is like kind of wonky. Like even if you looked out, I'm looking out the window at my tree, right at the tree across the street, and it looks like this. So maybe I'll do something like that. So you don't want your lines to be perfect. You want it to be a little bit kind of wonky. And then maybe I've got, maybe like that. So I've got 3 little branches there. Then I'll fill that in. And then you can let that dry for a second. Nice thing about alcohol markers is that when you let your alcohol marker, when you let the marker strokes dry, you can layer on top of that. So if I were to layer like this green on top of this green on top of this green over and over and over again, it'll get a little bit darker every single time. So, and alcohol markers dry really, really fast. So this is almost dry. And then I can go in and see how you can see the color is darker already. And I might add some little marks just to give it a little bit of texture, make it a little bit wider at the bottom. And then I'll go in with another color. So I just chose the next color up in my Grayscale set. This is YG051. So again, the light is coming from this direction. So I'm going to add the shading on this side and on this side of the trunk. And because the tree is would be casting a little bit of a shadow, I'm gonna do some shading like underneath, like this. So we want it to be anywhere the light would be hitting and casting a bit of a shadow. You might even, because if you look at the bark of a tree, the bark itself casts a little bit of a shadow. Now I'm using that same Grayscale set. I'm gonna go in with a warm gray. This is just my darkest shade. So I'm gonna add a little bit here, a little bit there. To add, I actually probably went a little too dark here, but that's okay. This is just to show you how to shade or how to sketch a tree. If you wanted to go one step further in making this even more dramatic tree, I have this green gray that I could go in and just darken the very bottom of my tree, like this, just to give it a little more depth. We can't forget to add some grass just to give it a little, you know, reality check, I guess. I'm just kind of flicking like this. And then I'll go in the same sequence. If I can remember the sequence. And again, the light's coming from this way. So all my shadows will be on the right bottom of the grass, and it'll be deeper at the bottom. Same thing, going with the next color down. So I don't want this, like the top part of my grass to be super dark. I want the base to be, sometimes I like to do like, you know, a little artistic flair there like that. And then I'm going in with my darkest color here, if I can get the cap off. There we go. And just adding a couple little spots there, like that. There you go, you just drew a tree, and that was so easy. Now, if you wanted to go even one step further and make this more of an illustrator look, or an illustrated look, you could take a micron pen or any sort of fine liner in any thickness you want. I'm using a 005 micron pen, but you could use a thicker one if you want, depending on what look you're going for. And you could just add a couple of little squigglies here and there, add some texture to the branches or to the foliage, like this. You could outline your whole tree if you want. Maybe there's other little sections. Just add some little texture like this. This is nice too if you want to create like a specific look of, you know, like rounded, like maybe you want to make the leaves look kind of round, so you're going to add a couple little round spots like that. Or you want to make the trunk particularly gnarly looking, then you could add some little pieces of texture like this. You could add a little thing right there. Maybe there's a little squirrel living in there. You could add your little grass there, like that. There. That's more of an illustrated look. Depends on the look you're going for. So I could even go a step further and take an even thicker liner and do like thicken up anywhere where it's dark, like that. So anywhere there would be the thickest shadow. So here, 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 maybe in there, and maybe like a little bit down here like this. It really depends on the look that you're going for, whether or not you want just the alcohol marker look or you want a more illustrated look. But one thing I always like to do at the end is I always like to add little dots, because I'm an alcohol marker artist, but I'm also a watercolor artist. And something we like to do in watercolor is flick the paint. So I like to add little dots here and there just to make it look like kind of a watercolor look. I might even do it with my trunk. There you go.